Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for tonight's single game showdown slate. Monday Night Football, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Commanders. Divisional matchup. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. What we normally do in these videos, we talk about the injuries that impact the FanDuel and DraftKings showdown slates. We talk about low risk and high risk lineup construction tips and general strategies to help get you to the top of those contest leaderboards. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you get notified when we go live, upload any new videos. Roughly half the people that watch these videos aren't subscribed. So if you like it, by the end of the video, just make sure you're subscribed. That way you get notified every Monday and Thursday when we do these, in addition to all the other videos that we put out on this channel. Give us a thumbs up. Lets us know to continue making these videos. Helps others find the video as well. Any questions, comments on tonight's slate, throw a comment below on the YouTube video. I will monitor it throughout the day and get back to you. If you want in-depth discussion, join our Discord server, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. That link is in the description below. All right, let's get started. Eagles, Commanders. Unlike a lot of the previous showdown slates in the past couple of weeks, we don't have a ton of injuries to worry about for tonight. The big two really are Jahan Dotson is back for the Commanders, has missed the last few weeks. He actually hasn't played since week 4. Was scoring a decent amount of touchdowns. Again, that was with Carson Wentz under center. So we can't guarantee the production by any means, but their early round draft pick this year should be back on the field tonight. Should have his normal role as the wide receiver 3, with Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel out there as well. So Dotson's going to be back tonight. That pushes guys like Cam Sims, De'Ami Brown down the depth chart and further off our consideration list tonight. And then the other big one is J.D. McKissic, who missed last week with a neck injury. He's missing tonight's game as well. Played every game except for week 9 last week and tonight, obviously. In his absence last week, I was a little disappointed in Antonio Gibson's usage. I thought he would pick up a lot more targets, and maybe that was just a factor of that one particular game, a very small sample. But if you look at last week, Antonio Gibson, who is now, let's go to the flex spot, 6,800 on DraftKings, 36 snaps compared to 28 for Brian Robinson last week. However, the opportunities were in Robinson's favor. You see 11 attempts, 3 targets, so 14 total opportunities for Gibson last week. The 3 targets was the disappointing part for me. But Brian Robinson, 5,400, 13 carries, 2 targets. So it's going to be a split workload. In a trailing game script, as the Eagles are double-digit favorites here, you would expect even more work for Gibson tonight. Let's see if he can pick up some of that passing down work that McKissic left behind. And let's not focus too much on the one game in this sample where he just had the 3 targets. Again, if Washington can keep this competitive, if that's the scenario that you believe, then Robinson deserves more consideration. However, Robinson is cheaper, $1,400 cheaper. Robinson will get ownership in this range because he's a little bit cheaper than he should be based on his role. But the game script could easily could push him out here. So that is something to keep in mind. And that's really it. I mean, you scroll down, there's nobody else. Normally there's a sea of red in these games in the player pools, just not tonight. So let's talk about low-risk contests, right? 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads. Just have to beat half the field to double your money. Normally, if you read our showdown guide, which if you haven't already, make sure you do it. That link is in the description. Talks about historical ways to beat showdown contests. We try to either lock up all the scoring or we play values. Unfortunately, tonight, that is really difficult to do on both fronts. Eagles, obviously, Jalen Hurts takes a lot of the rushing touchdowns away from Miles Sanders. They mix in Boston Scott. They mix in Kenneth Gainwell. So playing Hurts and Sanders doesn't necessarily lock up all the scoring. It locks up a good portion of it. But Sanders is also expensive, the 3rd most expensive player on the slate. So that obviously has an opportunity cost as well. We talked about the split backfield in Washington. Can't really lock up all the scoring there. And then as far as the values go, there are none. If you look at the kickers and defenses, below the kickers and defenses are where we consider the value, cheap price play range. The only play that you can consider down here for low-risk contests or smaller contests is Logan Thomas, who ran a bunch of routes last week, finally back to his full-time role. Only 3 targets, didn't catch a pass, but he's going to be the most popular player down here. The only guy with a full-time role. In fact, of the players below 3K, he's the only guy that has run more than 8 routes, more than 10 routes in the last couple of weeks in a single game. So you're really grasping for straws down this lower price range. So we can't really play anybody. If you remember these other showdown slates of recent memory, even as recent as last night, we have guys 2K, 1K, $200, $800 that are playing decent roles. That is just not the case tonight. So It means you have to build a bit more balance in these smaller contests, in these low-risk contests. And you can't fit in all the top studs. I know you want to play Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Miles Sanders and Devonta Smith, and you really can't do that in these low-risk contests. So probably the best bet, I would avoid low-risk contests tonight. Your best bet is to play Hurts at captain because he's going to be 1,000,000% owned there. He's going to be the highest. He's going to eclipse 30% in the largest contests, probably more than that in smaller contests. So you play Jalen Hurts, and then take advantage of the special teams, kickers and defenses as a 10, 11-point favorite here, 12-point favorite for the Eagles. Kicker, defense, where's Jake Elliott? That gives you 6,900 left per player, roughly. You can make this work. If you want to fit in Logan Thomas as the value, now you have 9,150 per player. That's probably the route I would go, but again, it's not safe by any means. And if you go over to FanDuel, it's a similar concept where, as usual, Sanders, $13,000. That is pretty expensive for a guy we can't guarantee all the work. You want to play both quarterbacks generally on FanDuel. So I think a start like this makes sense, but as usual, as we've talked about in these videos before, playing the 3 top guys and punting the last 2 positions generally is not a profitable showdown strategy. So you have to get rid of one of these guys. We'd probably get rid of Miles Sanders based on the split workload, based on Heineke being a quarterback and the half-point PPR scoring. Start here. Now you have 9K per player. You can play the kickers and defense. You play some of those mid-range guys. Logan Thomas, if you want to play a cheaper guy, he's only 7K over here. It's the same concept. No values below kickers and defenses. Jahan Dotson at 8K is the cheapest guy. Logan Thomas 7K. Everybody else is running less than 10 routes per game. So similar concept. That makes it tough. Now let's go back to the DraftKings and let's talk about high-risk contests, GPPs, leagues, satellites, exponential payouts. You have to beat a lot of people to win a lot of money. And there are 2 angles that you want to play tonight, or at least think about, right? Eagles big favorites. We know that there are going to be a ton of Eagles captains. Eagles captains are going to take up a vast majority of the ownership. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders. I mean, we're talking 60, 70% ownership right there. Eagles defense, throw them in. People are going to play them as well. And you have a lot of Eagles heavy builds as a result, which makes sense as a big favorite. So probably the scarier, but more likely, I would say, outcome is to play at least 3 Washington Commanders in your lineups. If the scoring is concentrated on the Eagle side, that certainly matters. Or if the scoring is so spread out and one of the Washington Commanders gets a majority of the production on their side, and you build a 2-4 type lineup, that works as well. So something like, let's just say you think Gibson takes on a huge passing game work tonight, trailing, gets 10 targets, 8 targets, whatever it is. He ends up as maybe not the highest score, but the optimal score. So you play Gibson, you play Heineke. Now you play 4 Eagles, right? A 2-4 construction. That's what we consider 2 players, 1 including the captain, 4 from the other team in the flex. That could work as well. So any sort of Washington captain or multiple Washington players in the flex build is going to be pretty contrarian tonight. So I think that's a good way to go. The other option, and this is mostly for larger contests, but if you have a read in the smaller contests, small field GPPs, you can play this as well, is taking a shot on these values down here. So let's just look. Let's go one by one, and we'll talk about pros and cons of these guys. So Quez Watkins is going to be virtually unowned. Runs a decent amount of routes, just not a ton of targets, but we've seen him break showdown slates and small game slates, short slates before. So Quez Watkins is an option. De'Ami Brown's going to be relegated to the 4th wide receiver role. Not going to run a ton of routes. Same with Cam Sims, right? These guys aren't going to run a ton of routes. We're talking 5 routes or less probably. Zach Pascal, cheap, gets some targets, but again, not a guy that's productive, but he will be on the field some, so not the worst play in the world. John Bates, let's see here. He's gotten targets, right? Even with Logan Thomas back, so maybe he's a guy. He'll be out on the field. Same with Armani Rogers, who is the other, there he is. Even got a rushing attempt last week, Armani Rogers did. Former college quarterback, maybe they use him a little more in that capacity, or around the goal line, maybe luck into a touchdown with Armani Rogers in the Wildcat formation. We have the Eagles tight ends and Jack Stoll, 10 routes last week. I mean, that's really, we're loving that in this price range at $200. Grant Calcaterra, tight end 3, maybe he catches a touchdown. I mean, this is what we're talking about down in this range. It is really tough. So, I mean, we're still scrolling here. No one down here. It is rough waters. So that's a little tougher. But again, for large field contests, if one of these guys catches a touchdown, which again, we've seen countless times on showdown slates. This is more of a mass multi-entry strategy, and they're 1 to 4% owned. Helps you fit in all the studs. It's a top 1% finish, most likely, if you have these guys and they score a touchdown, because there's not much action to go around down here. So again, that's a really high risk strategy, not something you can really play in small field contests. Again, maybe just punt the position. Boston Scott, running back 3, he could get some work as well, obviously, especially in a blowout script. Right, we talked about this, I think, a couple showdown slates ago. Oh, it was the Texans and Eagles showdown slate. Boston Scott, that didn't play out because Texans were pretty competitive. But if you expect a blowout script, maybe Boston Scott. We saw him get 7 carries, 6 carries in these bigger victories against Pittsburgh and Dallas. So there are worse ideas. Believe me, there aren't many bad ideas in showdown. So Boston Scott certainly plays there. He's probably the safest of the cheaper plays outside of Logan Thomas if you're going to play him in small field contests. So. All right, that'll do it for this video. Appreciate you watching as always. Check out our daily plug, OccupyFantasy.com. Our writer Bismo will have that up by 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Eastern today. Goes in much further detail than I can describe in these 8 to 10 minute videos. He'll have rankings for small field contests, low risk contests, large field contests, overall slate notes and statistics and notes and strategies, lineup construction tips for specific contest types. Make sure you go check that out. It's an invaluable resource. In addition to our model, which is up and running, ranks every player, FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, has projected ownership for DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as our lineup builder, allows you to build up to 300 lineups, allows you to put all these strategies and just see what fits together. It's a great tool to use for NFL Showdown contests. All right, before we get out of here, make sure you are subscribed. That actually, once again, helps us out, obviously, right? As a YouTube channel, the more subscribers we get, that's great. But again, because we're putting out multiple videos per day, it's not a guarantee that you'll be shown this video if you're not subscribed. So subscribing is the best way to get notified if you like these videos, that you will see them again in the future. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Helps others find the video. Any questions, comment on the video below. Join our Discord server. Happy to help. Brian Jester, Occupy Fantasy. Good luck in tonight's Eagles and Commanders Showdown slate.